I noticed an interesting post on Instagram about AI and writing. And the gist of the post was the writers using AI to create their manuscripts are doing something bad, and many people chimed in to agree with that sentiment. I agree with it too. I don't think writers should use AI to do their writing. I'm thinking here of fiction, any kind of fiction really, particularly literary fiction. If you're a literary writer and you're using AI, you don't understand the point of trying to or attempting to write literature. Nevertheless, one comment in the comments thread really stood out, and it was by a fellow named Rob Freeland. And he made a point that I think is extremely important. The distinction nobody's making here is the only one that actually matters. Using AI to generate text and submitting it as your own work is the problem. It's misrepresentation, and agents are right to name it. But, quote, any part of the process, unquote, is where this gets muddled. Writers use editors, writing groups, beta readers, researchers. All of them shape and redirect the work. Nobody calls that fraud. The question has always been whose vision is driving it and whose voice it comes out in. It's also worth noting that several publishers at recent writing events have openly admitted using AI to cut their workload. The anger in this thread flows entirely toward writers submitting slop. None of it flows toward the industry gatekeepers doing the same thing from a position of considerably more power. That asymmetry deserves attention. The question someone previously raised is the one actually worth sitting with. What happens when AI-generated work becomes genuinely good and undetectable? The, quote, any decent editor can spot it, unquote, defense only holds as long as it remains true. It may not for much longer. That is the conversation worth having rather than competing to draw the most uncompromising line. Publishing, in the end, is a business. And right now what we're seeing widespread through our society is any business that conceives of AI being at all helpful to its bottom line, utilizing AI. Why should the industry be that much different? Now, in creative fields, I mean, there is a lot of tension. You know, I make movies. I know a lot of filmmakers too, and some of them do use AI, and they are frank about it. They almost have to be, because the human eye can generally detect AI imagery. Maybe not for a couple of seconds, but if you show a whole sequence of moving image art, you will, after a while, begin to detect certain cues that indicate it's AI. So filmmakers using AI as one of their tools might as well be upfront about it, and I think most of them are. With writing, it's quite different. There's a kind of quality of secrecy and evasiveness, I think, to a lot of writers doing it. And then there's the industry itself cutting its workload. You can easily imagine the temptation that would exist for an agent at an agency. Remember, the agents work purely on commission, using AI to sift through manuscripts to do a kind of triage. Similarly, you can understand the temptation of an acquisition editor at a publishing house wanting to sort of summarize or sort of double check on sort of the overall flow of a manuscript before committing to really reading it in the old-fashioned way. Obviously, this technology is going to infiltrate the workflow of both agencies and book publishers. But what's also happening is that with certain kinds of genre fiction, where the quality of the writing doesn't really matter that much, is, again, some writers are actively, aggressively employing AI. I remember reading an example of a writer, a romance writer, who was very prolific. She produced, like a dozen or 15 or 20 novels annually. She has bumped up that rate of production to 200 titles using AI. That means that she's producing a new novel, a new romance novel, every day and a half or so. And the reason why she's doing it is simple. She sells around, she self-publishes, as I understand it, and she sells around 50,000 copies per title. If she has 200 produced annually, that means sales of 10 million copies annually. If she gets a royalty of $2 a copy, which is standard in the industry, she's going to make $20 million in 1 year. With these sorts of figures, these sorts of pressures happening, AI is definitely going to have an impact on how things do in literature. And finally, when I made the example of, I used the example of my filmmaking friends earlier, with AI-produced prose, and as Friedland says in this comment of his, there may come a time when it is quite hard to distinguish between AI-generated writing and non-AI. And again, I don't think that readers are quite as adept at distinguishing between those two. I know that they feel that they can distinguish between them, and I personally have had this experience because I've been teaching for many years, and I've been teaching EFL. I've been teaching English language learners, and I can generally tell when they're using AI to generate a polite email or to produce a paper or whatever. Again, I tell them just to be honest. I can sort of identify particular markers, but can I tell all the time? I don't think I can tell as accurately as, for example, I can recognize AI-generated content with my eyes. I don't know whether that's just me, but I think it's generally true of most people. And again, because of that possibility of generating AI content that's writing and being able to produce it in a way that readers can't make the distinction, makes the challenge that AI is presenting to writing, to book production, particularly acute.